Greetings, fellow citizens of Avengers Campus. Tomorrow is the big day. It is Avengers Campus Eve. Tomorrow is the big day, the big reveal for so many of us, but I thought it would be fun to look at the design of this land and explain to you some of the design tricks that have been used, many all related to the amount of space that Avengers Campus was built in, a very small area, the former Bugs Land. But I've been noticing as the photos have slowly coming out, I noticed a lot of different design tricks and gimmicks that they've used to expand the land, to make it feel much bigger than what it is. So I thought it would be fun on the eve of Avengers Campus to get together and to look at some of these little tricks. So when you're there tomorrow or this weekend or the next coming weeks, and you're looking at things like this, why is it this way? Hopefully I can help you understand that. I am doing this today as a live stream to see if there's any way that I can sort of help explain the design process to people. And it's exciting to see so many of my buds over there on this little quiet stream that just popped up. Oswaldo, good to see you, buddy. What's up, Larry? All right, let's jump in and start with the grand entryway. This is coming off of the performance corridor. And before we get looking at the 4 major buildings that have been added to Disney's California Adventure with Avengers Campus, let's kind of look a little bit at the 101 land design of Avengers Campus. So here we go. Starting right out of the way, we have this entryway that we come into. Now this entryway swells out a little bit. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is how they are maximizing a really, really small footprint to make it feel as if so much more is happening, and that they can also hold a lot more people. So this swell here, this circle that you see, not only will this give like the Dora Milaje a chance to do a show on sort of an impromptu little courtyard, but will also give people that are kind of lurking, falling into Avengers Campus, an ability to see what's happening over on the web building. This little detail that is in the ground, this is something that I'm all for. I'm going to tell you a lot of things today that I'm not totally on board with, but I'll try to tell you the things that I also love so it doesn't come off as a negative review, because I genuinely am excited to go there tomorrow. I'm genuinely excited to see how all of this comes together in the real world. But when you're a designer and you have that trained eye, you can sort of see some of these things, some of the pitfalls of how this land will age, and also understand why some of these decisions were made. So this little symbol here in the middle of the ground, I got no problems with this. It's nice and geometric. It says sci-fi, it says otherworldly, but it doesn't look like it will date out too quickly. However, these angles that they have chose a lot around the park, these sort of hard angles that slope out, these are used for a very specific reason. One, they portray sci-fi, right? Like sort of hard angles, 45-degree angles. We don't use those a lot in our world. So when we see that combined with certain textures, it kind of feels as if we're looking at something that's sci-fi or high tech. In this courtyard that we're standing in, one of the reasons why they would make the wall swell out or angle out, like the line that I just put on the screen for you, is that already makes this area feel larger. If you had a straight vertical wall, that feels like a normal barrier. If it slid in, that feels like it's enclosing on you. But spreading it out is one of the gimmicks that you will see. You'll see this angle a lot in this land because they're trying to take the space that you're in and create a valley of vision, trying to create a space between where you're standing and the thing that you should look at. But then they will also try to reverse correct this angle with these lights that are above us, right? So we have the walls around us angling out, and then the lights come back in. What these lights are doing, other than stylizing Avengers Campus from the rest of the park, is they're creating a contrast line, right? So if everything that your eye saw was going in the same direction, it becomes very, very obvious, and the trick kind of doesn't work. So pushing 80%, 60% of your lines in one direction, but having a little pushback, it breaks your eye from being able to recognize the pattern. So when we come over here to the other side, you can see these little cuts, right? Those little dips that they have down there in the sidewalk. That is the shape that you see a lot to sort of interject that, Stark technology, that Avengers technology, sort of, getting us in the world of superheroes and science fiction. Those, I'm very curious how they're going to age, because when we go over to Tomorrowland, you see a lot of these similar angles, and it has a lot to do with the texture that is used. But when you look at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, in my mind, will be a land that will stay relevant probably forever. Because if you go back and look at New Hope and you go to Tatooine, those buildings still look really, really cool today. They use more circular shapes. They use a lot of natural substrates. So those buildings feel way more organic. They feel kind of tribal. They feel kind of exotic. But when you go to Tomorrowland, you see a lot of angles combined with bad textures. And that is one of the main reasons why that land looks dated. Now, if they would have went 55 classic and kept everything in sort of a future modernism, then things would be safe. And we'll get to that as we fully discover the rest of this. Okay, so the first big thing we get into is the Web Slingers building. Now, the story of this land is this is Stark Industries, one of their old factories. As the world developed and the Avengers needed a space to set up their campus, to recruit more cadets, to grow their cause, Tony Stark, who has a lot, was like, I'll give you my dad's old factory. We got an old factory we're not using. You can set up shop. That storyline allows them to use a lot of sort of our world or old world textures and storytelling. Therefore, everything didn't need to be metal and futuristic, because the idea of building and expanding out of a warehouse means the core principle where you started was a warehouse. And if you've ever been to Austin, Texas, or Chicago, or Louisville, Kentucky, you've seen a lot of city planning where they do take old warehouses, old factories, buildings that were built for one purpose, which was largely around commercial use, and then or industrial use, I should say, and then it gets retooled, rethemed for modern day living, right? Like an old factory becomes shops and restaurants or condominiums. And there's always sort of that balance of they leave what's rustic and cool, take out what is just decayed, and then add in a little bit of modernism to mix it up. So Avengers Campus, they use that same design template, but they also use it as a way to tell story. How's it going, Maria? Good to see you over there. All right. So these walls, they give us the ability to put a little bit of texture in there, put a little bit of aging, but they also add that contrast next to all the modern aspects of the land. But what is interesting about these is how they do a juxtaposition of old world, new world. So that lighting fixture, that is a very like modern lighting fixture, or that banner that's hung over there, as well as all of the reflectors and antennas and satellites that are on top. So it's sort of that old versus new is something that we've seen happen in a lot of our cities, and it's something we'll see happen in Avengers Campus. Tommy Perez is saying what a lot of people are saying. Looks like a lot of the lights and angles also pull from Stark's logo. 100%. They're going to work in as much of that Avengers storytelling as possible. Admittedly, I watch the films, but I don't do the deep dive. So really what I'm focusing on today is not where everything comes out from the cinematic universe, but just the angles and the design choices that were used inside of this world to make it as efficient as possible. With so many different heroes, with so many different sort of style guides for each character, they chose characters and stories that they knew would easily fit into their footprint. Somebody just asked me, my boy Johnny Blaze, high energy Johnny Blaze, said, what time am I going live tomorrow? I don't really know, because tomorrow has a lot of moving targets, a lot of moving pieces. So I will be going live when I get settled in. I don't want to say I'm going to go live at this time and then maybe I'm not even in the campus yet. So I will be on for a while. So just keep a lookout on the channel and make sure you rung the bell so you get that notification. What's up, SoCal Magical Express? So this next structure that we move over to is where we get into some of that new world, some of the metal, but they did use that warehouse door on the front. So it's kind of a in between the two steps in time here. But one of the reasons why this building is the height that it is and how it protrudes out is this is a big part of the flying Spider-Man Stuntronic that will go behind this building. And also the darker blue in the bottom, that's kind of the area where Spidey comes around and then goes over to the meet and greet, which is the next spot we're going to get to. So far, so good. But this little area in here, that's the spot where Spidey walks around. But as I was saying, so far, so good. But this area right here, design-wise, it's really, really smart. But aesthetically, there were some interesting decisions that were made. Let's get into the design, and then we'll talk about the aesthetic. So as you can see with the design, there are lots of different levels put into this long straightaway. Now, this is where Spidey goes back and forth and does some of the storytelling before he does the big payoff. But as you can see with the little stair steps I put in there, when your eye looks over at this, you see a tall tower. But when your eye comes over here, you see lots of vertical lines with compositional matching horizontal lines, which is basically creating this stair step where you're creating a spatial difference between what's in front of you and what's up above you. It also takes what's up high, pushes it back, creating as much space as possible from you, the viewer. So when you're standing here and you look up, there is so much more between you and your field of vision of what you're trying to focus on. Now, if you would imagine all of this on the blue building before, you'd just be looking straight up at something tall. But putting it up and back allows them a little bit of creative freedom with Spidey's movements, with some of the stunts maybe looking a little bit smoother, and also hiding lots of the elements they need. But when we get into this up close, I have to say, I'm really thumbs downing this graffiti because I don't think that it feels of modern time. And I know this is an old warehouse that has been brought up to modern times, but this style of writing, it just looks a bit dated to me. And out of all the writing that I see living in Los Angeles, which is probably one of the cities that is best known for graffiti and street art, this just doesn't cut the mustard. It feels like what a child would put in their notebook if they wanted to get into graffiti. And to me, it doesn't feel completely legit. Also, I'm smart enough to know that it's an advertisement. So there's a little bit of that back and forth. But what I'm interested about is if you look up on the top row, there's sort of that loose spray. That's something I'm very, very interested to check out tomorrow. But you see we have these steel beams that are not just there to hold up that blue horizontal line of like conduit that's running by. They are there to create strong vertical lines. So the strong vertical lines create a suggestion of height. So whatever you see looks taller, but then the stair stepping is creating a distance back from you. So height plus distance means something that's actually pretty close to you feels pretty far away. And the whole idea of Avengers Campus is you're essentially walking through a valley and everything they want it to go up and out so that everything is back as far as possible. Tommy Perez says, I'm glad you call me graffiti out. It almost looks too juvenile. And I agree with you. You know, I mean, when we see like Universal Studios hiring Tristan Eaton to do some really fantastic stuff, like I know people that would be willing to work for Disney to put something like unbelievable in there versus something that looks like from a subway car in Breakin'. Now, when we get over to the final building, I have no problem with the shape of this building, but the Circuit City red, to me, is probably one of the things that will date the fastest in the land, because if it doesn't feel hip and current on day of release, then how will it age? And I know what they're doing is I know that they're getting into trying to brand this as Spider-Man, but to them, I would say, we know the iconic shape of Spider-Man. To me, this could have been like gunmetal steel. This could have been, you know, a very like coarse metal, and then do a smooth metal that was the emblem of Spidey, or maybe even do the scaling of his uniform. Like literally, if you pitched me, make me a building for Spider-Man, the last thing I would give you would be a building that would be mainly red and blue, because it would just feel too obvious. And we're here to see Spider-Man. I'm kind of old, and I've known Spider-Man my entire life. You don't have to bash me over the head what his colorway is. I think his symbol and the shadow of his character is so much taller than that, so much stronger than that, than the actual primary color connection, that I worry a little bit how this will age, because to me it already looks a little bit age out the gate. Jay Tree says could have been a variety of colors. Yeah, and Jay, I think I would have went more with textures and symbolism. There's lots of things about Spider-Man that I think are maybe a little bit cooler that will go generationally versus just going with his bold colorway. And I kind of think that's one of the big problems in superhero branding is everybody really fixates on, Batman is gray and yellow and Superman is red, white, and blue. But to us, there's so much more than Hulk is green. There's so much more to these characters. And I think one of the things a lot of us have loved about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that we've seen these stories told much bigger, much more realistic. And so this is kind of a real simplification step down from the sophistication that we see in those films. Coco Loco says the building feels as if it wasn't built like Stark. And I would agree. This doesn't sort of have that like cutting edge technology that you would think. Appleman, thank you for the super chat, says how much square footage is behind Guardians of the Galaxy 4 ride? A lot. I showed it last night on my live stream. I got a map later on to this. I can't just pop it up right now, but trust me, there is a lot of space back there for that attraction, like a lot. Okay, let's move on. What's up, Laura Jean? How you doing? Good to see you there. Muslim 4243 says, looks more like for Iron Man than Spider-Man. That's actually kind of a pretty brilliant observation. So when we look at this building from the reverse side, we get a lot of warehouse and a little bit less Circuit City, but there's some interesting things that are being done here. This pod that's sticking off the side, this is the most troublesome part to me, because they went with this weird superhero type angle, right? Like, let's make people feel like they're in a world of sci-fi. Let's use these angles that we don't see normally in our world. But to them, I would have pushed back and say, let's go with a more modern angle, more Tony Stark angle, as somebody pointed out. Let's go all the way out, bring it down tight, something that has been proven that it can go a very long time. You'll see that a lot in mid-century modern homes that still look beautiful today. Or they could have gone the other way with it, or maybe even just gone full on, like make it look like a container from a semi or some sort of material that they had sitting around that they used it. But this pod shape combined with the Spider-Man blue windows and the glossy red Spider-Man like acrylic wrap. I mean, this might even look better if that was a matte or something that wasn't so high gloss. It just feels really cartoony to me, and I want this land to feel really realistic to me. But what I do like about this is I like the strong use of vertical lines. I'm going to keep flipping back and forth. We have all the steel beams. Once again, that steel beam pattern is creating lots of tall vertical lines. We have the edging on the side of the building, which doesn't need to be there, but it protrudes, it sticks out, shows depth, shows height. And then on the top part here, I really, really love that structure at the top, which adds that height. And just to kind of prove this to you, there's no reason for these green reflectors on the back side other than to create more vertical lines. So whatever you see happening up there, it feels tall, it feels far away from you, and it feels like something big is happening. These are also designed to draw our eyes up so that when we hear something, a lot of times the last place people will look is up. You've seen a lot of movies where a guy hides in the rafters or hides up above people. A lot of times people will look side to side. With strong vertical lines, your eyes will catch vertical things that will naturally bring your head up and you'll catch it. Appleman says, what are the odds Marvel expands into Hollywood land? I think high. Not right away, but I think high, because it's already technically expanded into Hollywood land, as they are using the area behind the Hyperion Theater for a makeshift food court so people have a place to go eat. Leani says those vertical lines and uniformity and add some calm to my eye. Absolutely. Okay. Then we have the area where we actually go into the attraction. You can see there's the single rider entrance. and the standby, things that will get used later in time. This is just symbolism, right? We're taking metal scaffolding. We're trying to create a web without creating a web. I'll give them a B for effort. But overall, this area right here, really the main area we've been able to watch them build over the last runtime or over the last couple of months. This is sort of to many of us, kind of the flagship entryway. And I think that it's successful in creating height, space, and making an amazing stage for performance. I think that it fails on its coloring and its simplicity. And I also think that it's a little bit too literal. This is definitely going a step down from how intellectual Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was. But hey, a lot of people complained about the intellectual nature of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, so maybe they know their customer better than I do. Let's move on to our next structure. I find this building to possibly be the thing that might age the most. However, I put at the bottom of my list, I put the Web Slingers building because its coloring is what is making it feel aged to me. On this building, you have very interesting line choices, but they use really great materials. So I do put this building up ahead of Web Slingers on my little countdown today, but there are some things that I find troubling about the HQ building. Okay, so when you look at this, what I've been talking about the angles, this is all hard angles, right? Like there's no like right corner here. It's all hard angles for us to look at. So that already makes us feel like we're in another spot. But the way that they use the angles, it doesn't hit into true modern architecture. It's a little bit of a miss. And with the blue lighting, it already kind of feels like something that I would see over in Tomorrowland. So I'm a little bit interested about what this looks like in 2041. Like, how will this look 20 years from now? Will we grow into this look, or will it start to look really dated because of all these hard angles that they chose? That's what I don't like about it. But what I do like about it, and the reason why they made what I think technically would be a bad decision, let me circle around and tell you why this decision was made. And it's pretty brilliant, right? Like, we got a problem, we got to solve it. We're going to break what we typically wouldn't do for a design rule, but we're going to get a better outcome. So we're going to trust that that'll get us someplace better. When we look at this sort of signature angle of the HQ, if we would have boxed it off, that's where it would look, right? That would be where it'd be boxed off. If we box off the second floor, that's where we'd be at. Now, I know you're already getting on to me. That's the stair step. But what is genius about this building is if we put you and your family and your friends out in front of the courtyard, this building is perfectly designed for photography because it puts whatever's on the stage as high as possible, but as far as possible from you. So therefore, in a relatively small amount of space, if you are close to the building, you can still, because they know their customer, right? You can still hold your camera, go into selfie mode, and catch whoever's on the roof over your shoulder. If this building was a true, like, modern design building and it was more straight, that space between you and the hero wouldn't quite be as pushed back. So when I first looked at this building, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that design. But seeing how it's going to be used, and usage is a big part of design. Like, I can get behind something that I think breaks some rules if the usage is right. And with this having 2 levels of storytelling, where we saw last night on the opening that each of these platforms will be used for heroes to run about and to, battle foes and to tell us a story. But the fact that you could be right on the edge of the building, go around, hold up your phone, and still get a relatively good shot with your hero or whatever's happened behind you. This is how the world is designed now. So many things are designed with photography in mind, because social media is the FOMO that is feeding the parks into this golden renaissance, where lands like this are affordable because they're making so much money, because FOMO, social media, YouTube, podcasts are driving more people to the parks than ever. So it wasn't my favorite design until I thought about the usage. And if you really think about how they created that valley, small amount of space, get everything as high, far back as possible, allowing people to get the optimal view and photo. Pretty well done, Disney. Pretty well done. Appleman said last night, Kevin Feige said last night he hinted at it expanding. The expansion's 100% happening. I will promise you that there will be something built behind this building. Does it get sized down a little bit? Is it a little bit less? We'll never know because we don't know exactly what we were supposed to get. But I guarantee you that is getting built behind there. No way they're stopping that. Okay, let's see here. I want to get some of your comments. Tony Mendez says the Quinjet has better scale than Kylo's ship. Agreed. But the Quinjet does feel a little tiny. But I understand. I understand why. Tommy Perez says, totally right. You lose so much of that building if those angles make it feel opening and inviting. You see so much of the building and feel like you're on the action. Yeah, it's pretty genius how they figured that out. So if they would have went with a true modern design of straight lines, and man, I wish I could tell you that this was a photo of my home. But if they were going with this type of lines, you can already see, imagine that brown layer is layer 1 and then the roof is layer 2. If you stand at the edge of that pool, you just have a big wall behind you. Whereas here, if you stand at the edge of that planter, you have a lot behind you. The one thing that I feel is missing from this land, though, is more of this type of organic modernism. We see a lot of this type of stuff in the films, and I just wish there was one structure that kind of got a little bit more into this type of storytelling versus everything being so rigid and sort of square and triangle-ish. Some little more organic would have went a long way. But when this building gets built, and I assure you that it will, because there's no way they're going to leave it hanging here, maybe the back building and maybe the adjacent buildings will sort of act as a little bit of an anchor. They'll give it a little bit of sort of gravity, if you will, because right now it's just all finesse. It's just all showy. But if you do a composition of a boxier building behind it, then it feels like the showcase or centerpiece next to something that's a little bit more sensible. So maybe it's a little bit hard to judge the overall aesthetic without knowing what's going to go next to it. But when you think about it from a photography perspective, really, really well done. Moving on into our next building, I'm really, really glad that with the Pym Test Kitchen, with the outdoor exterior, I'm really glad that they chose to go with curved lines on this front facade. Because in this corner, if they would have did those angles, right? If I would have angled off 2 and left 2 right corners, it would just already look like it's trying too hard. That round corner that is then repeated in a couple other spots, that will make this building feel fresher for a longer state of its life. And then also this band in the middle that I've highlighted for you, leaning on mechanical pieces, mechanics, industry, it's a timeless look. I mean, you can scale it a little bit old-timey, or you can go a little bit steampunk with it, but using the mechanics on the outside to show that it's part factory, part laboratory, that there's a lot of science and experimenting and mechanics going on. That's a really, really good call, and definitely why I put this a little bit higher than the other buildings, just because it feels like it's going to go a little bit further. It says sci-fi without being a little bit too practical or a little bit too beggy, but they did use one of those little cutaways down there at the bottom, but we'll let it step in that little area. That's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Moving over to web suppliers. Web suppliers gave them a really difficult task. We need to make a signature store inside this land, but we don't have a lot of space for the store. So how do you make a cube feel bigger and better than a cube? Well, you add a couple of things to make it feel a little bit bigger. Appleman with another super chat. Will a campus be a bigger hit than Galaxy's Edge? No. The campus, as it is right now, is, in my estimation, it's just not at a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge level. And it's unfair to judge it as. I mean, it's unfair to judge this against Radiator Springs just because, guys, we're talking about something the size of Fantasyland. Old school Walt Disney's 1955 Fantasyland. It's in a different tier. I think because it's not at the same level as Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Disney's a little insecure. And when I was talking with a friend of mine, he said, what do you think? I said, well, I think Disney's a little insecure, and that's why they're going so hard with heroes, so hard with food, so hard with like putting carts of food around there. Like with Galaxy's Edge, they got cocky. We'll give them the land, we'll build it to scale, but we'll give them the big attraction later. And I know that was a technical problem, but they still haven't really used the stages. And I think it was because they had the idea, well, when people get bored, we'll add a little bit more and we'll let the land fully, naturalize and scale over time. But with Avengers Campus, if they would have just like, here it is and we'll do more later, people would have been very disappointed. In fact, I would expect a lot of people that aren't open-minded, that aren't looking at this as constraint-based design, and they're just looking at it as compared to what they got in 2019, you are going to hear a lot of people as of Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday over on YouTube and over on social media complain about this land. You're going to hear that it's too small. You're going to hear that it's tiny. And so I wanted to do a video to explain to you, this is a thing that was designed around tremendous constraint. There's a reason why it's small, and there's a reason why these decisions were made. So hopefully that helps clear out a little bit of the this versus that type comparison. Tony Mendez says, I dig the generators on top of web suppliers. I love those reflectors up there. And once again, all of those reflectors, everything that we're seeing up on top the buildings, it's telling story, but it's also creating those visual guides to make us feel like we are in a campus space, like we are in an industrial space, and to keep us feeling like we're in there and also not seeing other things we're not supposed to see. So yeah, there's one of those little like feet on the bottom of this main pillar that doesn't need to be there. You got a perfectly nice actual campus looking front facade. That little foot doesn't need to be there. Okay, when we move around and we look at this building from the backside, and what a beautiful photo that I found of it over on Disneyland.com, you can see that the building's like very like cube in its shape. So to make it feel like there's more going on and that it's bigger than what it is, they built this nice little like box, right, protruding on the outside. It only adds probably 2 to 4 feet of depth, but visually, it just takes something that would have looked like just a square to us and just pads it out a little bit. When I add in these lines, it just kind of, if you think about it, when you look at it like this, my eyes sees it as, it's coming out at us. So that little box sort of creates that like, non-spoken action of that it's protruding and coming toward us. Then these pillars that were put generously around it, do you really need 6 of those? You could have got away with 0 of those. But those pillars add contrast of the white concrete against the red brick. We see the old factory style paned windows in there, but that has that little bend that I illustrated. That's creating height, that's creating depth, and that is making it feel as if it's big and it goes back just slightly, just a little sleight of hand to create some good storytelling. Once again, we see all of these vertical lines giving the little cube building height, but then we have the box giving it depth. A 1-2 punch to make something that's not that big feel a bit bigger than what it is. And then I love just the natural concrete retainer wall over on the left where you can see the conduit running to the lighting. Like this little type of thing really gets me excited as a designer, taking something that's small, adding in a lot of story and really trying to grow the space. I mean, just on the other side of this, we have Mater just whipping around over there, so it is right next to its neighbor. Pizza Lord says it's built on the old buildings too, story-wise, similar to the attraction. He says, I also absolutely love themes throughout the land. Yeah, I mean, it's very cool that they were able to put it all together. And you're right, Pizza Lord, like Galaxy's Edge is completely something different. And so I've tried to give people like, an educated way to think about how different it is. So if you compare the two, you have to compare them at much different levels. Tommy Perez says, I like how it feels like a city loft building with a store or something on its first floor. Absolutely. I love that vibe too. Just ask Danny, what's up, bud? How you doing, man? He says, hey, Brickey, I had a comment on the whole too small complaint. This is Disney's largest and most profitable franchise. Is this land and location the best choice for something that important? Danny, you are nailing it. Why is this being built in Bugs Land? And the reason is they've owned Marvel for over a decade and they don't have it in the parks. They needed to get in and they needed to get it in fast. And Danny, I know that you're a big Disneyland fan like myself. This was originally probably going to be built over in Hollywood Land. And I talked about this last night on the stream. They wanted to build that parking garage over on the east side of Harbor. That parking garage, the base level of that would have been where all of the buses would have then picked up and dropped off people from Toy Story, allowing guests to go over a sky bridge into the Esplanade. So therefore, that big area that's currently being used for buses would be able to get demoed out. And Hollywood Land has 3 huge buildings in it that aren't being used. I believe the original concept was, this is my own guess on this IP and how wealthy it is, that they wanted to do a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, level the buses, level those 3 buildings, go down to raw earth and build something up naturally from the ground up. City of Anaheim shut that down foolishly, forcing Disney into a much, much smaller land. But, you know, people would say, well, why not put it over in Disneyland? Well, when you're trying to get a family to buy multi-day tickets, if you put Star Wars on one side and Marvel on the other side, you just sold a 2-day experience. So I agree with you, Danny. It's wild that it's in this spot. So I wanted to really break down kind of the design decisions they made and how they tried to make the best of like really, really restrictive design. Appleman just firing it up. You know, you can ask a question without giving me money and I'll try my best to answer it. But I do appreciate it. Don't want to sound ungrateful, but I feel bad. Appleman says, given the Hollywood Land theme, Hollywood Land, I can easily see Captain America attraction. Your thoughts, and can you see Marvel into Tomorrowland? No, I don't think Disney will go across the Esplanade. I think that once a property is nestled into one park, you probably won't see it in the other one. So for Avengers to pop up in Tomorrowland, I don't think that would happen. And Tomorrowland, that's land that they could easily have built this in, but then they're overloading Disneyland. And really, pandemic-wise, this worked out well for Disneyland because the last couple of weeks, it's like, who's going to buy a single-day ticket to DCA when they could go to Disneyland that is so much more richer? This is going to put the scales a little bit more in DCA's favor for a while, now that the parks truly have to compete against one another. Tony Mendez says the expansion to this land will be on a helicarrier. Don't you worry, guys. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if they built a helicarrier over the top of it? That would be great. All right. My favorite part of Avengers Campus is the Doctor Strange area, the Sanctum. Not only because it feels like a park and I love all the green spaces that are built into Disneyland, but they went with a more classic type building. This does look like an old federal building with the concrete work and with the detail that's in there. This looks like something that would have been around for a while. I do love the gold accents to show that it was a little bit of a wealthier spot. The decay on it is just something that I think Disney does particularly well. And I love the idea of using the remnants of a building as a fence to keep a show on the inside and everybody on the outside. This area at night, this is where you'll be able to find me from now on when I'm at DCA. I think that this adds such a nice effect to things. And whereas Spider-Man is really, really like literal, this feels a little bit more experimental, a little bit more practical magic. And that is what I really enjoy about the different franchises. When we come back around, I'm missing a couple slides here, but essentially what I was pointing out, and it's not a no-brainer, but this area right here, that's the keyhole that I'm always talking, right? This door framing the next door. I believe that we've seen some teasers that Strange is going to come from the other door there in the courtyard, but it's just creating like that double doorway. Creates that perfect vanishing point. It creates that perfect sight line. And this is not a big area. I haven't been in the campus yet, but the fact that they keep shooting it with wide angle lens is like trying to just make it look big, like it surrounds you. But I do not believe for this to be a very large area. But I'm glad that they did this in this little space. And this just goes to show, like, what else would you put here? You know, and this is a very interactive land because it has to be, because it can't rely on a bunch of different attractions and a lot of different space for everybody to sort of move around. Yeah, I am missing a couple slides. Oh, that's too bad, because I had a map from above to sort of work you guys over what that indeed would look like. All right, let me look over at some comments here, but that pretty much goes around the land, showing you the different buildings and why I believe they were designed the way that they were. Just trying to let you understand, like, you know, this probably isn't their first pick for all of this, but it's what they had to settle upon. And sometimes restrictive design can be really, really fun and really inspiring. And the reason why I do love Disneyland so much over like Walt Disney World is that Disneyland is tiny and it constantly has to react to the world around it. And Avengers Campus is pretty similar to that. All right, let me look at some of these comments here. Gizmo says, if anything, they will eventually expand into Hollywoodland, and it just got pushed back. Yeah, I think that eventually it'll go in that area. Just as Danny says, that's a good point. I appreciate the insight on that. I like the perspective of best use of space for the size they have. They've crammed a lot of stuff in here, 4 acres without Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, Danny, it's pretty amazing what they were able to do with some creative problem solving. Gizmo says they're probably just testing the waters to see if the land will be successful and then pushing the old Hollywood land. I would think that Hollywood land is probably earmarked for expansion of this. You know, I try to think about what properties are they missing between the two parks. A lot like I think Tomorrowland is probably earmarked for Fantasyland expansion. You know, over our two relatively smaller parks, they have covered a lot of different properties. It's hard to think about what else would be better to put in Hollywood land than more Marvel. Tommy says at night feels like Marvel's take on the teacups, and I like it. It does have a very strong teacup vibe with those lanterns hanging down from the tree canopy. Tony Mendez says, the Sanctum at night gives me Oogie Boogie Bash walkthrough vibes. Oh, yeah. Villains Grove. Man, if you got to see Villains Grove, that was some magical, magical stuff at Disneyland. Just a beautiful walkthrough. Cute Latin Guy says, question, you've been mentioning possible expansion where the bus drop-off area is. If that were to happen, wouldn't that block the pedestrian access from Harbor Boulevard? No, because what they would do is they would do, if you were on Harbor, you would either have to go over to the bus state or the parking garage to come in, or they would put a checkpoint there where you would walk up a sky path that would get you up there. But to get into the park from the harbor side, you would have to join that structure or that sky bridge at some point. And that was the big reason why the city of Anaheim said no, because a lot of the businesses that are on harbor, they were put there to sort of, you know, feed off of the Disneyland crowd. And their theory was that if you take all the people and put them in their cars, put them up over the sky into the park, and if the pedestrian bridge goes up over there too, that we'll lose our customers. And that's where the pushback came. And that pushback is why that project didn't happen, and is why the Pixar Pier Garage or the Pixar Pals Garage happened. How would people enter the parks from the East Garage? I'm not exactly sure the lane that was going to go in there. I don't think it would have like the HOV perks that the Western side has, but that was the big plan to get people in. And if you think about it, if you bring people in back off of Catella, there was probably going to be a back path to get them in. People wouldn't be going down Harbor. I believe that would not be happening. Nikki Ramirez, oh, I love this. As a non-Marvel fan, the Doctor Strange area looks the most interesting to me. You know, Nikki, I am a Marvel fan, not like a hardcore fanboy. Like, I don't read the comics. I just go and watch the movies. But from day one, the Doctor Strange area has always been the most inquisitive to me. It's always been the part that I was like, you know, that's where I really want to go and check things out. Marcos is just like dreaming on a dream there. He says, annual passes on Disneyland's birthday, July 17th? I'm going to say absolutely not. Nicholas Garcia says, I think Hollywoodland could use a major revamp, but I think a larger animation building as the centerpiece would be good. It's an interesting decision there. Disneyland today, they said they would be by the end of the year, so most likely it would be as soon as July. Expect something around October, November. I think Disneyland today's got it. I think annual passes will be a fall type of deal. I think they're going to just let the summer just roll through as it is, a la carte tickets. I would expect an announcement sometime around September, October. I think Disneyland today has pretty much got it nailed. Jeff Klein says it's really hard to tie in the size scale of the Guardians of the Galaxy facade. Yeah, the Guardians building is interesting because now it is officially a part of Avengers Campus. So when the land gets locked, you cannot just go into Guardians anymore. That is something that will not be happening. So you have to be inside of Avengers Campus to ride Guardians. And the main reason for that is they are using the food court on the backside of Guardians, or not a food court. They're using the Hyperion Theater overflow as a place to eat on the other side. So I'm pretty sure that once you get to the Hyperion Marquee, that will be where that border of Avengers Campus will be at. Appleman says behind Guardians of the Galaxy perimeter is 1,600 feet. That sounds a little bit small to me. I measured it the other day. All right, everybody. It seems like we've had a good little discussion, and the point of this was to try to give you an idea of exactly how this land came to be about, why these design decisions were made, and also to give you an educated comparison to why this is not Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Maybe if the ball would have bounced a different way, they could have done something comparative or comparable. It just didn't go that way. So, I think that this is something that you got to give, a little bit of space. You got to realize that it is a early phase and a multi-phase project. Last night, they were really tying in the whole, Disneyland will never be completed. Avengers Campus will never be completed. There are two different major ways this land could grow, over in Hollywoodland and also behind Guardians. The Marvel universe is so rich with great characters, great storytelling, and it's so visual. It lends itself maybe better than any other arm of the corporation for this type of theme park immersive storytelling. So let's hope that something good comes out of this and that we enjoy it, but be prepared for a lot of people complaining this weekend and the upcoming days, because, outrage means clicks. When I put up a video that has a positive title, nobody watches it. If I put up a video that makes people think that I'm mad, suddenly a whole extra crowd of people show up, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be abusing that. So, just kind of pick and choose your battles on who you trust, and make sure you go out there, see it for yourself, and make up your own opinion. One last question from my homie, Tommy Perez. Maybe a dumb question, but are they going to do a virtual queue to enter the campus? All right. We'll talk about this real quick. The wording for the queue is really misleading. They tell you that if the land is locked, that you can join a queue to the right of the land. Give me a second, guys. We got to pull up a count. We got to get. Can I easily pull up a map? You guys got a couple minutes for me to get a map going? This is the map song. As he loads up the map, Google Images taking us to Avengers Campus. guys are just all about blueprints today, and I love it. Normally I can get nobody to hang out with me when I want to talk about a map, but you guys are all map ready, all map horny, and I love it. Okay. Brickey and the magical map. Let's see, take away slides. Boom! There we are. Okay, so this is where it gets kind of misleading. They said that if the land is locked, you'll be able to go to the right of the entrance, which is this area. Oh, you can't see my mouse over there, which is this area right here, right? That area cannot hold hundreds of people, and it surely can't hold a few thousand people that want to get into Avengers Campus. So could it be worded in a way that that's where you go to join the queue, but then the queue is through your mobile phone? Because they have the technology. The last time and the only time I'm aware of they ever did this was with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And I remember those first couple of weeks going to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, looking and seeing what, boarding group they were on just to get inside of the land and knowing, whoa, one day we will use this to get on Rise of the Resistance. Now they already have the technology to use this for riding web slingers. If they think they're going to do a physical line, they're crazy, because even if they took people, the biggest area where you could hold people was if they used this area in here as a queue. So you could load people all in here. But during social physical distancing, think about that would block over to Pixar, over to Pacific Wharf where they sell stuff and make more money. It would block the main entrance to Route 66. What, are they going to shuttle people back and forth? If they don't do mobile, they're making a huge mistake, because they have the technology. And during physical distancing, do you want everybody, standing around in one spot? Or do you want to keep moving people around and let people shop and spend more money? I really, really hope they do not do a physical line that you have to stand in for a long period of time. And I'm hoping that when they say that you go to the right, that it is just where you go to sign up. Now, I really want to know what this building is. Everybody's talking about the rides. I want to know what this little kiosk, what this little bad boy is, because it's not a part of Avengers Campus, and it's not a part of Cars Land. And I've been bugging a friend of mine who's a cast member to go figure out what it is, and he still hasn't done it for me. Disneyland Today says, I read they were going to do a 1-for-1 queue. For every one person that leaves, one person gets in. But that takes a lot of coordination and communication. Well, it does. And they were able to do 1-for-1 during free DCA. Because remember, you had to be on a queue to get inside of free DCA. But guys, when they did free DCA, they did that on the phone. Just ask Danny. Do you remember going up to the kiosk, scanning and getting in, and it said that there were 80 groups ahead of you? So they surely have got to do this digital. Just Ask Danny said the World of Queue viewing area is marked, or the World of Color viewing area is marked for a queue tomorrow. Wow. Godspeed, everyone. Whew, I hope that is not the way that it goes down. Thanks, Daphne. I appreciate it, bud. Thank you for the super chat. Okay. So real quick, while we got the map up and we were talking about it, this is the size of that bus area that we were talking about. So, if we just draw a little bit of a sloppy line, you have all of this. I'm going pretty sloppy. Well, you know what? We'll skip the animation building because people really love it. And we'll even skip the little junior. But guys, that's 569,000 square feet, that spot there. That right there is the size of Galaxy's Edge. So when you think about where they really wanted to build this, wouldn't you want to have a Galaxy's Edge in one park and a Marvel's Land that is the same size in the other park to really make people try to figure out where they needed to buy a ticket. So yeah, that's where that is. And then the spot we're talking about for the parking garage, I believe that's right about back here. So if you see, we're highway adjacent, so it wouldn't be that hard to get people back in here. I believe one of these hotels they owned and they took out, so you'd have a ramp to just shoot people right over a skyway, boom, walk in to the Esplanade, just like we're currently coming in over here off of a skyway. So that's probably how it was all meant to be. How did we get into this today? We have a new land tomorrow, and we're such maniacs. We're measuring maps, trying to figure out what could have happened. I love that you guys are just as crazy as I am. Love it so much. All right, everybody. This is where we will part ways. Just I couldn't resist the temptation of pulling up a map and showing you guys those things. But I think right now where we're getting to is this moment. We have a brand new land opening tomorrow. I'll be there bright and early to live stream and to show it to you and create lots of videos. So many other of your favorite social media Disney people will be there. And it's going to be an amazing day. And this is where we are all at right now. This is somehow where Disney fans' minds are at. Right? Like that is what we just did. Like, oh, I got to look at the map. I got to figure it out. Okay, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you enjoyed the design breakdown. Hope this gives you an idea of how things can come together, why they made the design decisions they did, and just how different this land is from Tomorrowland. And also get prepared for some of the naysayers to start doing their naysaying. I've already seen the first wave of it. Thank you so much for showing up. And friends, I want to thank everybody over at Club 1313 for making today's live stream possible. If you would like to become a part of my community, please head over to club1313.com. Consider joining and be a part of our amazing Discord. Can't wait to see so many of you guys out at the park tomorrow. If you enjoyed this, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would really, really help my baby channel. And if you could leave a comment, that would help as well. Would sincerely appreciate it. Friends, thank you so much for showing up today. I cannot wait to see you in the parks tomorrow. And so, friends, I have to say, until the next time I see you standing inside of Avengers Campus, I'll see you back here with more Disneyland updates. Letting the song fade out.